Hello guys, I'm on a shoot today and my friend Josh has just whipped out one of these. This is the new iPhone 12 Pro Max. It is currently the best camera you can buy, manufactured by Apple. And this is my professional camera setup, the Sony a7R Mark IV paired with some sweet Canon glass. Now I know how ridiculous it is to make a comparison between these two cameras. They're two completely different things, but I'm just curious as to how far the iPhone has narrowed the gap with professional cameras such as mine. Just like that. If anything, maybe move a little bit away from the wall. Let's test. Well, I don't even have a 13mm lens with me right now, so I'll do it at 1x optical, which is 26mm. We'll do it at 2.5, which is 65mm, and then we'll put the big lens on and we'll just test out with the digital zoom and see what it's like. Gosh, that stabilization is amazing. See, what's interesting is that it actually shows you a wider view.
Yes, that's cool, isn't it? So if you were to go to the wide lens, that's what it shows you.
I don't know how much of that's attributed to the screen, but the composition's pretty close, right?
Yeah, it's pretty similar.
Okay, so before I tell you which is which, let's call this camera A, and let's call the second shot camera B. At first glance, can you tell which was shot with the iPhone? Camera A, camera B. Now, to be fair, Apple ProRAW is still in beta form, so we had to shoot in camera with JPEG, but I'd love to review this again when Apple ProRAW comes out. So what I've done here is I've actually tweaked the Sony RAW file just in Adobe Camera Raw to match that of the Apple JPEG file as closely as possible. Now what happens if I zoom in, say, this much? Camera A and camera B. Camera A. Now let's see what happens when I zoom in even more. Camera A and camera B. Camera A, camera B. Now you should be able to see, unless you're looking at this on a really old phone screen, it's quite obvious that the resolution starts to fall apart on camera A. So therefore, camera A is in fact the iPhone, and camera B was shot with a 60 megapixel Sony. If you're only using this for social media, I would say it is really close. However, having said that, comparing the way it is right now, having RAW on the Sony gives you much more flexibility than what you would get with the iPhone. Once Apple's ProRAW support is officially out of beta, that'll be really interesting to see how that goes. Now, one of the main giveaways to me that camera A is from the iPhone is the fact that the iPhone has more vibrancy in camera as well as over sharpening. Now I did pump up the vibrancy in the Sony file a little bit just to try and match that of the iPhone. To be fair, my settings on my Sony a7R Mark IV is set to very neutral contrast, saturation and sharpness settings. So that is a dead giveaway that the softer, less vibrant shot is coming out of the Sony. However, once ProRAW is available on the Apple iPhone, I assume you would be able to turn the sharpness and vibrancy down as well, which would close the gap between the two even further. Now, Apple has obviously made the choice to enhance sharpening and vibrancy because it looks better straight out of the camera and posted on social media, but it's not as flexible for print enlargements. That's close enough. That looks great. All right, I'll try another focal length. And here we're shooting at 65mm, which is the longest optical zoom supported on the iPhone. Again, I tweaked the Sony RAW file slightly in Adobe Camera Raw just to match the iPhone, but it's obvious now which is shot from that. It has a wider depth of field, more in-camera sharpening and vibrancy. When Apple's ProRAW is no longer in beta, perhaps we'll be able to test this out again and make the iPhone image match the Sony's instead. This really surprised me. The in-camera bokeh processing has come a long way from my aging iPhone XS. However, the keen observers should be able to tell which is the genuine lens bokeh. Then it goes blurry.
Yeah, it's just a matter of getting it.
Look at the highlight out of focus in the background of the Sony image and how it creates bokeh circles that you don't get in the iPhone.
You didn't make that look nice and smooth anyway. You made that look really difficult.
I can't do 312mm on this, but
I know.
I've got 60 megapixels.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just zoomed in as tight as you can, center of the front wheel.
The stabilizer is fantastic.
It works pretty well, doesn't it?
And how we are being truly mean to the iPhone, but it does offer 12 times digital zoom, so I wanted to have a look and see what the difference was anyway. This doesn't include any potential future lens mod attachments, but still, if you want to shoot really long, interchangeable lenses are hard to beat. Now on my Pro Sony setup, the lens I used only goes up to 200mm, which isn't quite a match to the iPhone's digital zoom, but the megapixel advantage of the Sony a7R IV easily compensates for that. This is a sensor stabilization test with the iPhone 12 Pro Max. It has sensor shift stabilization built in wide view. This is a stabilization test with the GoPro Hero 9. I have it in boost mode, Hyper Smooth 3.0. The GoPro 9's Hyper Smooth 3.0 in boost mode is way more stable than the iPhone, but the image quality is so good on the iPhone. I'm amazed with the results of this test. The image quality is superb on the new iPhone, and really, the main standout advantages my Sony has left is the resolution and RAW adjustability, the latter of which will be available on the iPhone soon as well. Of course, if we start heavily manipulating image files, there will be a significant difference between them, but the majority of casual users don't really need that. For the casual user, especially if they don't want to deal with interchangeable cameras or settings, it goes without saying that phone cameras have reached a point of maturity. As further evidence of how good the image quality is, check out this poll I did on my Instagram story. Out of 822 votes, 46% guessed the iPhone image correctly, the other 54% guessed the Sony photo instead. The fact that it's so hard to distinguish the difference between the two under similar camera raw settings and on a typical viewing resolution these days on social media means that, as far as I'm concerned, the new smartphone has kind of won this. The smartphone continues to erode the traditional camera market. It's destroyed the point-and-shoot consumer market, and it's eating away into the higher-end consumer market now as well. Even those who might use professional cameras for personal use, they might not bother upgrading because it's a lot easier now to use their phones. The thing is that smartphones don't necessarily have to be better than our big cameras. They just need to be good enough to win the majority of consumers' hearts out there, and this certainly does that. For the rest of us enthusiasts and working professionals, we'll always want to use a real camera. But we don't represent the entire camera industry. In fact, we only represent a tiny slither of it. And that's why smartphones will slowly but surely continue to take over the consumer camera industry.